Hello, nice to be back with you again today. Peter Cox here with Mark Thomas, business strategist, author of 99%. Here it is. Let me show you a real genuine copy of it. It's in paperback now. You can get a copy on Kindle as well. And the subtitle is How We've Been Screwed and How to Fight Back. Now, I've been looking at some of the news headlines this week. Lots in the news. Lots of very scary stuff. But the occasional leak. And Mark, this has caught my attention. It's in The Guardian, first of all, widely reported elsewhere. I'll just read you the headline. UK facing risk of systemic economic crisis, quote, official paper says. So that is, as far as we know, a leak. I'd like your views on that. Is it a genuine leak? And if so, should we be as scared as some people are?
Well, I haven't seen the leaked document itself. I've seen reports in newspapers about the leak. So I have no way of knowing where the leak is from and how recent the document is and so on. Right. But I would say that it wouldn't be the first time there has been a leak. There haven't been very many, but there was a leak while Theresa May was still Prime Minister, which was the only time that an official government assessment of the economic impact of Brexit has hit the public domain. And we might have a look at that later, because it's, I think, relevant to this and quite revealing. So there have been leaks, and sometimes those leaks are acknowledged. This previous one was acknowledged, and it's now up on the government website. This one I don't think has been acknowledged yet, but it seems to me quite likely. A number of newspapers have picked it up, so it seems quite likely that there is a leak. And the things it says sound very plausible, which is that a lot of adverse circumstances are going to come together, and we might not really be able to cope with it properly.
Yes. Yeah. So there are two types of leaks, really, aren't there? There's the sort of leak that is a real leak. And somebody somewhere is so disturbed, usually at great personal risk themselves, that they do leak information to the media because they want to get the news out and they feel that the public are being withheld. But then there's the other sort of leak, and you get an awful lot of that in right-wing leading newspapers. It feels to me like they're testing the water. They're putting a few feelers out to see what sort of reaction they might get. And sometimes I think it's just propaganda to make us feel frightened.
Yes, my guess is that if this is a leak, it's that first type of leak. Okay. That it's somebody who's sufficiently concerned.
That's your phone. That will be MI5, I suppose, just about to come round because they think you've got some unauthorised information. Shall we have a look at that unauthorised data that you've got before you get arrested? Tell us what this is. Absolutely.
Well, so this is the previous leak. This isn't this one. So this is now about 2 years old. But as I say, it's the only official government analysis that we've seen. And although it won't be exactly right, it's probably roughly right. And the message is very, very simple, that any kind of Brexit will do some economic damage. What this paper was claiming was that Theresa May's deal would have done a negligible amount of damage.
Which one is hers? I'm just looking from left to right.
So hers is government is second from the right. Government detail, as in white paper, if nothing goes wrong.
That's the least damaging one.
That's the least damaging, and that would be negligible. You wouldn't be able to say with certainty that damage had occurred because GDP growth is unpredictable, so that amount of damage could be down to other causes. Right. But obviously, as you get further and further away from being in the single market and frictionless trade and so on, the damage gets greater. And if you get to a new deal, you've got something where what they're saying is, more than 7% impact on GDP per capita. Now, just to put it in context, that's a bigger
I was going to
impact.
ask you, actually. I mean, it's 7%. Who knows what 7% is? I mean, how is that actually going to affect, ordinary people's lives?
Well, the global financial crisis was the biggest financial crisis according to one of the deputy governors of the Bank of England, in human history. So that was a big crisis, and it caused the Great Recession. And the Great Recession caused a reduction in GDP of about 6%, and we've still not really recovered from that. So when you see something which is 7.5%, at which the left-hand bar is there,
that's scary.
That's saying this is significantly more serious economically than the global financial crisis was. Plus, as that paper, the leak paper that you were talking about pointed out, it's not coming in isolation. It's not that we're motoring along very nicely with a booming economy right now, and we've got to take this big hit in our stride.
Exactly,
we're still in the grip of COVID, which is still not properly under control. It's coming back under control, but the daily rate of infections is still far too high to be able to contemplate saying, well, we'll just now we can ignore it. That would be utter catastrophe. So we're still not perhaps in the middle, but we're still very much in the grip of COVID. And as we've discussed in previous days, and everybody knows, COVID has had an enormous impact on the economy. So we're already in a weakened position because of COVID. And then we have something, and we don't know what it is. It's only about 35, 36 days to go until whatever it is happens. And we don't know what it is. Is it going to be a no-deal Brexit? Will there be a last-minute deal? If it is a last-minute deal, what will be the contents of that last-minute deal? We don't know the answer to any of those questions. So that makes it... For anybody running a business, that makes it extremely difficult to plan, because you can't plan for one thing. You have to plan for a spectrum of things, which conceivably might even include an extension. I think both sides have said there isn't going to be an extension. And so maybe there won't be an extension. But actually, from the UK side, not extending for the reasons that this paper sets out would be lunacy. And from the EU side, I can see some disadvantages in extending, because at some point they want the UK to negotiate seriously, but an extension just puts off that date. But given the extraordinary circumstances, I would have thought there might still be a chance of extending. So we have really no idea what's going to happen. But if there is a no-deal Brexit, then this paper is pointing out what they call a reasonable worst-case scenario. And we've seen from previous examples that quite often that reasonable worst-case scenario isn't too far from what actually happens. And they were saying, this could be nasty, because obviously, there will be a big hit to the economy. We've talked about that. And a lot of sectors could be really badly damaged, not temporarily, but permanently. The automotive industry has made that very clear. Nissan recently said they would have to close the Sunderland plant, which is Britain's largest car plant. And several other car plants are either already earmarked for closure or already at risk. Pharmaceutical industry is going to struggle a bit. Aerospace industries said it would struggle a lot. Clearly, farming would struggle a lot, despite what was promised at the beginning. And many areas of the finance industry could struggle. So we could have long-term economic damage. We could have serious health problems, both because we're still in the middle of COVID, but also just simply because supply of certain pharmaceuticals could become very difficult. They can't get through. And some of them are sort of time critical. It's like fresh food, which is one of the other things that might not be able to get through. So, a significant proportion of the supply of pharmaceuticals could be affected by this. We've seen what happens when you have this kind of contraction in an economy, that it's actually the rich people tend to get even richer. We've seen, I think we mentioned on a previous episode, that the world's billionaires have seen their wealth rise by 27% this year. Hooray! Which is very good if you are a multi-billionaire. is not so good if you're at the bottom end, because actually you've seen yourself get significantly poorer, and many people are really struggling. More and more people at risk of bankruptcy. So that process of mass impoverishment could easily be accelerated by this, and the report then draws what sounds like a plausible consequence to me, that public order might be an issue, because
that's very interesting.
You've got a lot of desperate people. And they're divided. The population is quite divided on the question of Brexit. So the Remainers will say this is all the fault of the Brexiters, and the Brexiters will doubtless say this is all the fault of the EU and Remainers, and therefore it's foreigners and Remainers who are the problem. So you get a divided population with real risk of, for example, things
Sounds like Weimar Germany to me.
Well, who knows? And this is one scenario the report is painting. It's not a prediction they're giving it, but they're saying these are possible outcomes. And they sound possible. You remember we did that analysis of the US and asked, would the US explode? Well, we might want to revisit that and look at, if we did that same analysis for the UK, how would the UK look post-Brexit?
So,
because I suspect it wouldn't be much better.
Just anecdotally, all right. So already there was a little bit of local news here in London. I don't know if it made the nationals or not. A few days ago, pub offering a job, amazingly actually, because pubs have been pretty much closed. But it had a restaurant actually for a waiter, minimum wage. They had 980 job applicants. 980 to do minimum wage waiting in the pub. That I don't think that's unusual. I think that's a harbinger of what's to come.
Well, I mean, there's a clear risk of that. So I think the Bank of England recently did a survey of businesses, and so they had asked executives what their forecast was for hiring and firing. And the conclusion, if I remember correctly, was that we could be heading for 3.5 million unemployed, which is a colossal number. And by contrast, there are, I think, about 500,000 vacancies at the moment in the UK. So that means even if you could match them all up, which that's not an easy thing, but if you could, you've still got 3 million people with no jobs, not because they're not looking, but because there are no jobs out there.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. You had people like Priti Patel saying, we're the laziest country in the world. Our workers don't want to work. I mean, that's not true. There's 980 people applying for a minimum wage waiting job in a pub. It's the fact is, there just isn't a job for them. And I think to be told, absolutely, to be lectured like that, I can see why the government is preparing these secret reports into public order. Actually, I could easily see that scenario happening in the UK. But I want to ask you, actually, Mark, as an experienced management consultant, let's just step back a little bit from this and look at the management job that these people are doing. Because it's often struck me that politicians usually get into the job without any experience at all. I mean, sometimes they're lawyers, sometimes they're not. And I just wonder whether, I guess what it boils down to is, are we in the current situation because they're just no good at doing their jobs, or because there's actually an agenda at work here? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I think we have a cabinet which is drawn from a very, very small group in society. So many of them actually went to not just the same university, but even the same school and the same university. So, these are people who, in many cases, have known each other for 20 or 30 years.
The chumocracy.
And people call it the chumocracy. And most of the people they talk to are people in that circle. They don't really talk very much to the 980 applicants for that job that you were just talking about. They don't mix with those sorts of people. They might very occasionally mix with somebody who's recruiting those people, but they will hardly ever mix with those people. So their vision of society is reinforced. It's groupthink, basically, which is, we're very successful. We've worked hard all our lives. We got ourselves into good schools and good universities, forgetting quite how much their backgrounds may have helped them get into those good schools and universities. And then we got good jobs and we worked hard, and now we are where we are. And frankly, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So I have very little sympathy for these people who didn't even bother to get an A level and now expect to be hired just like that. So they get into that mindset, which makes them incompetent, because their view is that the only people you can really trust to do anything are people who are just like me. So you reinforce the groupthink, you hire your chums. We've seen this with the procurement of the PPE.
I was just going to say, yes. I mean, what a catastrophe! What an expensive catastrophe! It's not just wasted billions. Apparently, it's actually cost people's lives.
Well, it will have cost people's lives, and also the delay in the lockdown undeniably cost tens of thousands of people's lives. I think the handling of the unlocking has undeniably cost many tens of thousands more lives. So we've got a very large avoidable death toll. How do I know it's avoidable? Because if you look at the statistics, as we did the other day, you see that there are plenty of countries in the world that don't have a similar death toll to us. Different countries have managed in different ways, and most countries in the world have done a lot better than us. So, this isn't really a question of opinion in terms of the results. It's opinion about why we have the results, but it's not opinion about the results. We have, objectively speaking, a government which has mismanaged very, very badly. And as you say, that's cost a lot of money, but it's also cost a lot of lives. But I think, so coming back to your question about the root cause of that, I think a big part of the root cause is ideology, but I think it's also that it's groupthink, and the two go together, of course, because if you only ever talk to people who share your ideology, then you just feel, well, this is the truth. Everybody believes this. Just as there are people in some of the southern states in America who believe that evolution is a hoax, or indeed that the coronavirus is a hoax. Well, if you're surrounded by people, all of whom believe that these things are hoaxes, or climate change, of course, some of them believe climate change is a hoax. If everybody believes these things are not real, you don't believe they're real. So they probably don't believe that. I don't have to go on.
You don't have to go. No, I want you to go on, but you don't have to. You don't have to go to the southern states of America to find people not wanting to wear face masks. I mean, almost every day in the newspaper that I look at, a lot of the Daily Mail, there are irate articles about this gross invasion of personal freedom. It's our right not to wear a face mask. And I don't know how many people think like that, but a lot of people who read the Mail are exposed to this. Do you ever see that?
I don't normally read the Mail myself, but I do sometimes get to see the headlines. I'm privileged in that way. But yes, and it's an extraordinary point of view, actually, to treat mask wearing, which I agree is an imposition. It's a pain in the neck. I don't particularly like it. But compared with imperiling my fellow citizens just because I don't want to do it, it seems extraordinary. And I was just reflecting that, if you think back to the Second World War, during the Blitz, we had air raid wardens who went round shouting at people and telling them they had to turn their lights off and draw their curtains. Now, if that Daily Mail attitude had been prevalent then, people would have been saying things like, well, I'm not going to cower behind these Nazi, the threat of this Nazi Blitz. I'm going to have my doors and windows open with my lights blazing like a proud Englishman or a proud Englishwoman.
It's my right not to draw my curtains.
It's a monstrous infringement. An Englishman's home is his castle, and anybody who's telling me I can't have my lights on, I can't wave my flag out of the window, and I can't have the curtains open, that's a traitor.
It's just the same.
That would, of course, not have been tolerated during the war for very good reason. And it is just the same because it would have cost other people their lives. If I say, no, I'm not going to cower behind a virus, I don't want to be muzzled, or I don't want to wear a nappy on my face. They use quite emotive language.
Yeah.
I don't want to wear a nappy on my face, so I'm going to go shopping, and I'm not going to do all this namby-pamby social distancing. And I'm a free Briton. Well, if all they were doing was imperiling themselves, I would say I feel sorry for them, but perhaps we should let them do it. But they're not doing that. They're actually imperiling everybody they come into contact with. And so it really is very much like somebody in the middle of the Blitz deciding that their right to open their curtains and blaze their lights transcends everybody else's right to be safe from the bombs.
Yeah, fantastic analogy. I've learned so much over the past few weeks with you, actually, Mark, and I have to say, actually, I won't see things the same way again. And nor will you. If you get hold of Mark's book here, 99%, you can get it just by going to that little link there, 99.redhammer.tv. It'll take you straight through to the buy page on Amazon. An eye-opening read. And if you've got any questions for Mark, he's more than accessible. Leave them in the comment section here on YouTube, and we will respond in due course. Meanwhile, see you tomorrow.